I'm Mark. I'm a digital solution architect at Legal & General.
And I'm Nathan. I'm a MarTech engineer at Legal & General. And just to start with, we have some of these cartoons throughout the sessions today. And you may notice this is me and Mark on stage right now with all the right words in all the right places. And just we forgot our ties. Apologies for that. We do look a bit scruffier than what we present. But do keep an eye out for these during the presentation because they pop up, and see if you can find some classic AI misspellings, because there's some juicy ones in there.
So today, we're going to talk to you about the data foundations that we've built with Telium and Braze, and the AI innovation experiments we've been doing, and how we're bringing these together to power Legal & General's next generation customer experience. And our goal is to share our story and leave you with ideas that you can apply to your own user journeys to better serve your customers. Okay, so AI didn't just happen overnight, of course. We can trace its origins back to the 1950s. But more recently, a few things caught my attention. In 2015, Google released their Deep Dream image generation software, and it used neural networks to create dreamlike images. I don't know about you, but frankly, I find that terrifying. Then in 2019, I went to the NDC Developer Conference. There was a lot of talk about image recognition, computer vision. One of the speakers gave a talk about some software she'd written that used image recognition to identify characters from My Little Pony. Now, at the time, my two young daughters were obsessed with My Little Pony, so I could also identify those characters. That one kind of resonated with me. Then, in 2021, we had the Tom Cruise deepfakes. Videos of Tom Cruise, except it wasn't Tom Cruise, it was an actor and some AI, and this really started to raise some questions of trust. But anyway, interesting as all of this was, I didn't see how any of it applied to my day job at Legal & General. And then, November 2022, ChatGPT was released. It had 1 million users within 5 days. By the end of January 2023, it had over 100 million users. And it was good. It seemed to know everything. And that conversational experience was really compelling. And it was fast. But we soon ran into some limitations. That early release didn't know anything after September 2021. And so if it didn't know something, it would make stuff up. It would hallucinate. Plus, to be useful to me at Legal & General, well, it didn't know anything about our products and services. It had no access to our knowledge. And it certainly didn't have any access to our customer data, so it could never answer questions like, what's my pension worth? So whilst we could see that AI was becoming powerful, to be truly useful, it needed access to data.
And we were doing this with Telium and the MarTech engineering team, well, the MarTech team as a whole. For the past 4 years, we've just onboarded Telium, pushed it onto individual products, but scaled it across our entire enterprise. More or less every single customer touchpoint runs through Telium to some extent. And this allows us to create great experiences because Telium, in a great Telium fashion that I'm sure if you're not already aware after today, you will be after this sentence, will constantly try and stitch your data together to make sure the customer profiles are always connected. And this is great. But the main problem we had with this, and Jeff mentioned this earlier in his talk, we found that we were escalating over 600, 700 attributes. On average, he said 500, I think. So we're smashing that. But this made it very difficult for us to get any context into personalization, into the areas that we needed specific use cases. And that's where Moments API comes in. Moments API allowed us to ignore all the 700 attributes that we wanted to and concentrate on just the 10, 12 that we needed at the time. And I came here last year and talked about how we were using proof of concepts on this. Now we are scaling this forward to actually be front end for customer usage. Moments API as well also makes, because it's such a small payload, it takes a 4, 5, sometimes 8-second time delay for the main Telium enrichment to come back to 50 milliseconds. Really, really quick, really powerful, contextualized data, what you need at that time. Now, this is very, very important for what we want to talk about later, but first, we have to look at L&G's journey into the AI world.
So at this time, at Legal & General, we already had some customer-facing chatbots. But they were simple intent-based systems. They used keyword searches to retrieve knowledge articles. And they were built on top of predefined flows. So it wasn't a great user experience. It wasn't truly conversational. And you could get stuck in these flows. You couldn't change the topic and ask a different question. We really like this ChatGPT user experience. And Legal & General had set up an AI practice, and they were building a bot creation framework. Now, one of the capabilities that they supported was retrieval augmented generation, RAG. You've all heard of RAG, right? So using this, we were able to import about 4,000 of our knowledge base articles. We built a proof of concept chatbot that could have conversations over our knowledge base. So I sent it off to the knowledge team and asked them to test it. And a few days later, had an incoming Teams call from Steve in the knowledge team. And his face popped up on my screen. He was beaming, big smile. He said, "We've tested it, and it's really accurate. This conversational style is just really good, and it's an improvement over what we've got at the moment." They really liked it. But there was a problem. You see, at Legal & General, we have over 15,000 workplace pension schemes. Different schemes work in different ways. So they have different knowledge. So in order to answer questions correctly for our customers, we were going to need to know which scheme they were in. To be successful with this, we had to personalize the experience with customer data.
And again, this was something that we were doing at the time. We were personalizing all of our customer data through Telium and pushing it into our new experience platform, Braze. Braze was emailing our customers or giving them the best content at the right time. And we had already solved this sort of schemes problem. So a scheme for us is essentially everyone here has a pension with where you work, maybe with us, Legal & General, maybe with a competitor. You might not even know. And that was one of the things we found with all of our customers. And these workplace schemes are essentially that. We communicate differently with different schemes. We will call you different things. We will give you different knowledges. We have to serve you differently because you have different kinds of pensions. Some people consent to some stuff and not to others. So we were already managing all of this in Telium, and we had all the data we needed to do this in the customer experience platform. And with Braze, we had the bilateral connection as well. So if someone opened an email or clicked an email and went on to do a KPI conversion, we had all that coming into Telium, every single bit. So as you can see from here, we've got all of our data sources at the bottom and then how we communicate with our customers at the top. Feel free not to take every point of this in, obviously. But look at the big words. Telium sits right across the middle. Every single data point runs through Telium and then communicates either through Braze or through the paid media advertisement or through some operational channels. Telium sits as our brain, orchestrating, getting that context, delivering it to the mouthpiece in Braze. so that we can communicate with our customers. And we know that AI is going to be a big part of how we communicate with our customers moving forward. We all know this. This has to go alongside our current customer experience platform through Braze and any other channel that we want to use. So how can we leverage this setup so it can work with our AI?
So back to chatbots. If you remember, we had this proof of concept, conversational chat over knowledge using RAG. But we hadn't been able to personalize it with customer data. And then MCP happened, Model Context Protocol. Open standard lets you define tools that AI agents can use to access functionality. Telium were really quick with their MCP tool, made that available to us. We created our own MCP tools to give agents access to our systems, to access customer pension details. And you'll notice I'm talking about agents now, because everything had become agentic. So this here is the UI from our bot building platform. So this is where we were building and testing everything out at this point. And our agentic setup now, we had a supervisor agent, and that could analyze the incoming prompt and decide which tools to use. Or might decide to hand off to the knowledge agent if the question could be answered from knowledge. So we'd asked the AI team to focus on a use case, something that a lot of our customers need help and support with. And this is around nominating beneficiaries. So they built this demo for us. This is how it works. Okay, so a beneficiary, someone who we pay your pension to if you die. Different schemes have different rules, different knowledge. So the customer would type in a question about how do I nominate my beneficiary. The supervisor agent would then use the Telium MCP tool to check which scheme the customer was in. And then it would hand over to the knowledge agent to get some scheme-specific knowledge in the answer. The supervisor also had access to our internal tools, so it could check to see if they'd already nominated a beneficiary, and it could even add or update beneficiaries. So we did a demo over Teams, and Lee, one of the other architects, when adding a beneficiary, he said, what happens if we give it an invalid date, the date of birth? And the supervisor agent was able to recognize this and say, no, that's not a valid date. Try again. So then I said, well, what happens if we give it a valid date, but 300 years ago? And again, the supervisor agent was able to realize and reason that someone born 300 years ago couldn't possibly be a valid beneficiary for your pension. So we were really pleased. We had an agentic chatbot, it knew who you were, and it could not only talk about pensions, it could talk about your pension. So how did we keep the momentum going? I wanted to bring it to life. Now, we didn't have time to set up a project. That would have taken too long. So instead, I ran a hackathon. One of our trusted delivery partners kindly offered to host it at their trendy offices at London's Silicon Roundabout. Took about 40 people off-site. We had a web team, an app team, L&G's finest, brightest minds. And as everyone came into the main room at the start of the day, I set them the goal of integrating this chatbot with our mobile app and our website. People wandered off to the breakout rooms, huddled over laptops. And then, when it was lunchtime, we called everyone back to demo what they'd done. So people are wandering into the room, they've got sandwiches, picky bits. Some of them are still coding, hunched over laptops, walking into the room. And everyone sits down, and we start the screen share onto the big screen. And then, for the first time, we saw our agentic chatbot in action in our mobile app and on our website. We were so excited about this. And it was only lunchtime. So in the afternoon, we did an innovation sprint. Everyone was agreed that they wanted to explore the idea of generative UI. So this is where agents are responding not just with text, but with UI fragments. So for our nominate beneficiaries example, the agent was responding with a simple form to make it easier for customers to enter the details that we needed. The web team experimented with charts and graphs and tables of information to display fun details in an easier to understand way. It was a really good day. And so, now that we can build these experiences, Nathan's going to look at how this fits into L&G's future engagement model.
That's right, but first I want to say this was very exciting to see this generative UI come to play, seeing all the data that we normally see in this raw platform coming into effect in graphs and tables and form fields. Blew my mind on the day, to be honest. But we're connected with Telium, and Telium has 400 different destinations that we can utilize. All this is available in the CDP via the Moments API, giving us that contextualized data. We don't want all of it, we want what we want at this point. That's then connected to the MCP, which allows us to retrieve all of this and give it to our AIs. And I think you've heard this a few times now, but Telium is completely agnostic to what AI platform you want to use. We fed it into our Microsoft for a trial. We also fed it into our own built AI called Bob. It worked with both seamlessly. Neither had a problem with this. And everything comes back into Telium. We have that full circle of the customer engagement. This allows us to see the full customer view. So if someone does something like nominating their beneficiary, we don't email them. Because why would anyone change nominate beneficiary 2 minutes after they've just put one in? All possible through Moments API. This is the key part for us. We didn't want to flood our AI with 700 attributes, probably 5 different email variables, and then get confused over which one to use and then hallucinate with our customers. And with Moments API, this allows us to do personalization. We can look at being proactive with our customers. When they open their AI chatbot, we should know what they are here for. Why have they opened up the chatbot? You can see here there are 3 different examples. There's me, Sandra, and Fuad. And each of us have different prompted notifications that we can start the conversation off with our AI chatbot. Before we're even going, we're being proactive for our customers. This is the future of communication. We're using coherent, contextualized data from Telium for this to give the best customer experience.
OK, so what's happening right now? Well, business were really excited by what they'd seen with the POCs and the hackathon, and they asked how quickly till we can get something into production. So we have landed on a nice, tightly defined scope